So I think I heard about it through my aunt. I was living with my Aunt Dorothy at the time in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And she was a Quaker, or she was dating Doug, who was a Quaker. And so I can't remember actually hearing about the peace camp, but we were going to go to a march on Washington that was happening in the 3rd or 4th week of August in 1983. And so I knew that we were going to stop at, somehow I knew something about a peace encampment, but I don't remember anything in particular. But so a group of us got in this van and we drove through Canada, which I thought was really exciting. And then we showed up at this farm. And Doug couldn't stay because he was a man. So he went and camped somewhere else, and all the rest of us were women, and that was the peace camp. So we were there for a couple of days before we went to the March on Washington.
So that was in 83?
That was in August of 83.
Wow.
I think probably about the 20th or something. And what I can remember about it is that it was definitely like this place, like very well organized and evidence of, you know, a lot of work and women, but it wasn't like there were tons of women there at the time. But I know like the security thing was in place and the non-registration was in place, you know, and we just sort of went through the whole thing, and I was just amazed. Like the whole thing was amazing, you know, but it just was what was. And I remember we camped back in Briar Patch, or was it Amazon? Which one is on to the right?
I think Amazon.
Amazon's on
the right is Briar Patch.
Yeah, so we were in Briar Patch. I remember setting up in Briar Patch. And I remember we went up to the main gate and sang songs. And it was just us. It was like us that came. We were in a circle, and there was the main gate and the soldiers on the other side, and we just sang. And that was cool. And I remember Dorothy and I did security, which was just super fun. Like it was just like playing with walkie-talkies. I mean, I had no clue about like security. It was just like, wow, this is so fun. And we were making up jokes and songs. But the one thing that sticks out in my mind that was the most memorable about that weekend, because it really was only a weekend, was I remember, like, you know, you have some images that are like just seared into your brain. Like there's just like this, they're there like in a movie screen, and like everything's soft focus around them. And what I remember most clearly from that moment, the revelation, was standing like at the back of the house, like in the backyard, and looking across at whatever that area would have been called, that was where the garden was. So I remember a woman was using a backhoe in Circus, and I can just remember, like, my image is just her on this backhoe, and it floored me. Like, I could not believe that a woman would be doing that. And I grew up in a really liberal kind of household, you know, very athletic. Women could be anything, but it never occurred to me. It was just like this moment, this epiphany of like, all of a sudden, so much more was possible than I thought was possible. That was like the thing that I took away. So that was the peace camp. That was August of 1983, and then we went on to the March on Washington, which was fabulous. And then we came back to Ann Arbor, where I was living, and we organized a peace camp. So that October, and that was the big deal in 83, you know, it's like you come here, you did it, and you take it back to your community. So at the Quaker house, there was a whole group of people that came together, and we organized a 1-week peace encampment that was on the lawn and inside the Quaker house. So we had, you know, workshops and films, and I was on the street theater committee. I think it was the street theater, I don't know, I think it was guerrilla theater or something. So, and I must have seen something, I think between August and October, when the peace encampment, when we did it in Ann Arbor, I think Greta, there were 3 women that came through Ann Arbor. If I'm remembering correctly, it had to happen between that and that. And there's the University of Michigan there, and they did a slow walk on the diag. So I think that was like it. I wanted to do street theater when we did the Ann Arbor part. So we wrote a play, we wrote a skit, this whole skit, and, you know, Holly Near's lyrics were in there, and, you know, all the groovy people of the day. And I designed T-shirts for our encampment, and it was this so beautiful green and purple. I think my mom still has one of the T-shirts. It was green and purple. I don't know why those were like the peace colors, but it was the peace symbol was the woman's hands, you know, so the whole little thing that we learned at the peace camp, but breaking the bomb. So that was like it was the hands, the forearms making the bomb break, whatever was the peace symbol. So it was Ann Arbor Women's Peace Camp. Those were our t-shirts. And then later, so that was 1983, and then I ended up working at the festival, Michigan Festival. And so then I met Barb. And so Barb and I had this whole plan in the summer of '85 that we were going to learn how to ride motorcycles. We were like so off our rockers, like we were living in like early lesbian film or something. We were like totally like, we're going to take to the road. And I think she had like a motorcycle that was like just above a scooter. I mean, it was not the kind of thing like you take on a road trip. We were like, we're going on the open road. And she was this poet, you know, and I was this songwriter, and we were going to live this little lesbian radical dream. So we thought of places we wanted to go, and we made like this little map, like this festival, then down to that festival, and then this woman's land, and the peace encampment was on our little list of things to do. And so before we got to that little tour, which was probably going to start in June, and we had this plan in March, like we all slept with different people and got mad at each other and weren't talking. So it was like, oh hell, that went that dream. And so I'm like, I'm going anyway. I just had like this, I was going to go to the peace camp. And so I made a phone call, and I don't even know who you could call them, but somebody was going to pick me up in Geneva. You know, they're like, yeah, I said I want to come, okay, great. So I boarded that little bus and got to Geneva, and there was Pam Flanagan, who met me in Geneva with my guitar and my backpack. And I remember driving out to the land and walking into the middle of the end of a regional meeting. I think it was regional, something. There were a bunch of women sitting around a big table. And I remember Helen and Andrea. I think Kai was there. And that was the beginning of the end.
So that was in '85.
That was May. That was the early May of 1985. And we were getting ready for Mother's Day action. I met Laura Boswell then, because she came out for the Mother's Day action. And Woody and I thought Woody was fantastic. We went to Waterloo to get supplies for the water line. I was just like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. It was so much fun, like really exciting, and everything happened really quickly, you know, like weeks. It'd be a week, but you would live like a couple of months. There were a couple of things that I really got at the peace camp that stayed with me for the rest of my life, and you're going to stay awake for this, woman.
Totally awake.
All right, if you fall, well, better you fall asleep on me, but was that I just had this image that, like from TVs and movies, that if you, like you couldn't just go to the, you know, the site of this base, this US Army base, and like get bolt cutters and cut the fence. Like it couldn't be possible that you could do that. So I knew that they had, you know, technology and infrared cameras, and they would know what you were doing, and they would arrest you, or they would have you, I mean, I just knew that. So to go to the back of the land and be hiding out in the dark, when you knew that they were looking at you through high-tech cameras and they could see you but you couldn't see them, you know, and they had sound sensors and tripwires, you know, they had all kinds of stuff. And then like you're hiding in the bushes and you're whispering to each other and you run out, you know, because there's like this space between the bushes and the fence. So you run out and you clip, and it's really loud in the night, and you run back. And there was like nothing. Like, what do you mean there's nothing? Like, there's nothing. They didn't know, they didn't care. And so I just remember just being floored by the fact that like that level of, like the whole myth of security and authority is really based on us believing that it's true. Like, it's not true unless you believe it and you adhere to the rules. So that was a huge moment for me. Like, I really did not know that they had so little control, actually, and so little knowledge and so little technology. I mean, at least in 1985. So then it just became really fun to just, you know, clip out whole sections, because they would come by on their patrols, and you would hide in the bushes, and then you wait till the truck went by, then you go back out and cut some more. So the funnest part was clipping all along the way until there was just like 2 clips that would drop the, you know, entire 4 sections of fence. So you would get it to that point, and then they would drive away, and then you'd clip those last 2 and push it, and the whole 4 sections of fence would fall down, and then you would just wait till they drove back around. So I never was really interested in really sophisticated politics. I was just having a good time with people that were really fun. So, in terms of another moment that was very much an epiphany for me at the camp was I really did not understand how many women were sexually abused. Like, I didn't get that. And I was working with Take Back the Night before I came to the peace camp, so I must have had some sense, but I do. I mean, that circle that we had in 1985, where in my image, it was, by where the hammock is, to the side of the house, and I just remember probably 30 or 40 women, and I do remember sitting in that circle and being completely amazed by the fact that each woman who talked, had something to say about being raped or incested or sexually abused. And I really did not know that. I did not know that. And that was, it was terrifying, I mean, I know I got angry about it, but I remember in that moment just being utterly horrified that that could be a possibility, that we lived in a culture where that was possible, and that it was normal. Like, you didn't even comment on it. Like, how could we not comment? How can we act like this is okay? So that was huge. That was huge for me, the sexual abuse story. I didn't know it was that prevalent. But their stories were really hugely influential in who I am, today, and how I was then, and writing songs about it. A lot of the songs we wrote were just the stories of what women went through. It was huge.
So can you talk a little bit about that? How the stories came into being?
The songs or the stories?
I mean, the songs, how the stories became songs?
Yeah.
Part of the songs?
Yeah, well, immediately Helen was there, and so she was playing her guitar. I can remember sitting out in the grass and playing a song, and then me getting out my guitar and playing a song, and so it was really Helen, I think, was my song soulmate for sure at Seneca song soulmate. We just had a lot of the same experiences. She was a much better guitarist and better songwriter than I was, but I was more boisterous than she was. It was a good match. So we started playing songs, and then it just became a part of 85, other women, writing songs together, and the group of us that were there, Robin making music, Andrea, Luna, you, then Mike came a little later, and Fish was there, and Becky was there, and it just became something that sort of happened in that summer that grew. Jean-Michel came, and we played music, and we shared each other's songs, but then we just started writing songs together and writing our own songs. It was a big part of how we processed what was happening and how we communicated what was happening.